Hello there and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is L24 News, streaming live from the capital Algiers. I'm Abdurrahim Kashur, and coming up next in our news program. President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune on Tuesday left Doha, Qatar, heading directly to the brother state of Kuwait and his second destination for an official visit in the Gulf region. The UN Security Council on Tuesday convened an emergency meeting on Ukraine tensions. The meeting was held at the request of the Ukrainian side after Russian President Vladimir Putin signed two decrees recognizing the Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states. The German Chancellor has said that certification of the Nord Stream 2 project cannot go ahead following the latest Russian action in Ukraine. The commands come after Moscow ordered troops into the breakaway regions in the east of the country. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Tuesday questioned whether Ukraine had the right to sovereignty because he said the government in Kiev did not represent the country's constitution's part. Hello again and welcome, starting by the President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune, who left the Doha, Qatar on Tuesday for the brotherly state of Kuwait for a two-day visit. The visit of the President of the Republic tends to consolidate bilateral relations and to strengthen the deep bonds of brotherhood between the two brotherly peoples. Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, accompanied by senior officials made up the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the National Community Abroad, the Minister of Justice, Keeper of Seals, the Minister of Energy and Mines, the Minister of Agriculture and Rural Development, the Minister of Higher Education and Scientific Research, the Minister of Housing, Town Planning and the City, and the Minister of National Solidarity, Family and Women's Issues arrived in Kuwait, starting an official visit to the country, during which he met His Highness the Emir Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah. The Algerian President and his entourage were welcomed at the airport by His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Mish'al Al-Ahmed Al-Jaber Al-Sabah, National Assembly Speaker Marzouk Ali Al-Ghanim, His Highness the Prime Minister Sheikh Sabah Khalid Al-Ahmed Al-Sabah, and senior state officials. And now we will hear the national anthem of the both countries. Also, the President of the Republic, Abdelmajid Tebboune, met today with the Iranian President, Ibrahim Raisi. The talks took place on the sideline of the participation of the two heads of the state in the 6th summit of the gas exporting countries forum. Algerian-Iranian relations were discussed during this meeting, which took place in the presence of the Minister of Foreign Affairs and the national community abroad, Ramtan Lamamra. Also, the President of the Republic also had talks with the head of the Libyan government, Abdelhamid al-Dbeiba, on the other sideline of the participation of the two heads of the state in the 6th summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum. Talks focus on ways and means to intensify and strengthen bilateral cooperation in all areas, including security coordination, the fight against cross-border crime, protection of common borders, as well as the increase in trade through the opening of airspace and other routes.
First of all, I thank the President for receiving us today here in Doha. The reception was warm as always. Algeria and Libya have always enjoyed mutual brotherly welcomes. Algeria is a neighboring and a support state for us. It has always backed the Libyan people and government in the path of development and prosperity. We wish that Algeria remains strong and resilient to be a strong support for Libya.
Today in Qatar's capital, Doha, the 6th summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum was launched within the presence of the Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune, who is also participating in this summit, which seeks to build up a dialogue mechanism between the producers and the consumers, in addition to ensuring the stability and security of supply and demand in the gas market. Zahra Farjani.
Members of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum attend the final session of the summit in the Qatari capital, Doha. The forum began its work on Sunday to examine ways to increase their production in the midst of the crisis between Russia and Ukraine.
In the outset of the 6th summit of the Gas Exporting Countries Forum, we work to face the unprecedented crisis. And it's clear that the international cooperation is still important to face the challenges.
Qatar's Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani said that Qatar has opened the largest facility in the Middle East and North Africa region.
Over the past 2 decades, the world has seen many changes in the energy map, of which natural gas has occupied a large part, for various reasons. Qatar has demonstrated its support for the transition to a low-emission energy source, working to reduce the amount of carbon in the gas production chain.
Algerian President Abdelmajid Tebboune is participating in this summit, which seeks to build a dialogue mechanism between producers and consumers, in addition to ensuring the stability and security of supply and demand in the gas market.
Today in Doha, nearly 10 years after the convening of our first summit, at a time when our forum has reached a remarkable level of maturity and credibility. Only 20 years after its establishment, Algeria as a founding member has always highlighted the important role that gas plays as a factor in sustainable development.
In his speech, Algerian President said that Algeria was a pioneer in developing and valuing natural gas, adding that the establishment of the first unit to export liquefied gas in the world and the delivery of a commercial shipment to stations testify that Algeria has since been at the forefront of the progress made in this field.
The positive role of natural gas has been confirmed during the crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic. The world relied on this source for its energy needs. This summit is being held in a circumstance characterized by many challenges: the global health challenge, the challenge of access to energy, as well as sustainable development. Our goal is to face these challenges.
The summit of heads of gas countries is meeting amid fears that Russia will cut off gas supplies to Europe. If the Ukrainian crisis escalates, it will impact the development in the global energy sector and the growing interest in using clean fuels.
Europe now, after Russian President Vladimir Putin acknowledged two breakaway republics in eastern Ukraine, and as an independent, the UN Security Council convened a rare emergency meeting on Monday night. Miriam Zian on what's follow.
On Monday, the UN Security Council convened an emergency meeting to address the escalating Ukraine situation after Russia recognized two separatist territories and ordered soldiers to be deployed as peacekeepers. The unusual late-night summit was convened at the request of Kiev, the US, and 5 European countries, including the UK and France. French ambassador to the UN, Nicolas de Rivery, told reporters before entering the council chamber that they were confronted with a very dramatic situation. Linda Thomas-Greenfield, the US ambassador to the UN, spoke at the meeting, calling President Putin's decision a pretext for Russia to invade Ukraine again.
He has since announced that he will place Russian troops in these regions. He calls them peacekeepers. This is nonsense. We know what they really are. It's clearly the basis for Russia's attempt to create a pretext for a further invasion of Ukraine. The consequences of this action will be felt far beyond Ukraine's borders.
After a series of declarations, Russia's UN ambassador, Vasilina Benzia, suggested that instead of exacerbating the situation, they should focus on how to avoid war and put emotions aside.
Now it's important to focus on how to avoid war and how to force Ukraine to stop the shelling and provocations against Donetsk and Lugansk. Western colleagues to think twice, to set emotions to one side and not to make the situation worse. No one other than you can hold back the militaristic plans of Kiev and force it to stop the shelling and provocations against the Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republics.
Many countries reacted to Putin's announcement of the independence of the two regions, including the US planning to impose new sanctions in finance and trade on Russia.
The Russian president's decision to recognize the independence of separatist territories in Ukraine has sparked worldwide outrage. Mariam Ziyam has more details over this situation.
Russia's move to recognize the independence of the two separatist regions in eastern Ukraine comes amid months of tensions over its military deployment on the borders of Ukraine, which has raised fears of a war. In response to Vladimir Putin's decision, world leaders condemned the declaration, calling it a violation of international agreements. United Nations Secretary-General considers the decision of the Russian Federation to be a violation of the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Ukraine and inconsistent with the principles of the Charter of the UN. UK's Prime Minister Boris Johnson have also imposed sanctions on Moscow.
This is the first tranche, the first barrage of what we are prepared to do, and we hold further sanctions at readiness to be deployed alongside the United States and the European Union if the situation escalates still further.
As for China, the permanent representative to the UN called on all parties concerned to seek reasonable solutions to the Ukraine issue. The African country of Kenya has also joined other countries to condemn Russia's move and said the country was gravely concerned with recent Russia's announcement. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman said Iran was closely watching developments in Ukraine, calling on all sides to resolve the issue through dialogue and refrain from engaging in any action that would increase tensions. Russia is now faced with huge criticism and worldwide condemnation due to its decisions.
In the same line of thought as tension in Ukraine continue to escalate, the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy has stopped the certification process for the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. The move comes after German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said that it was a necessary step to suspend the certification of the Nord Stream 2 given the current circumstances. Nabil Khazini.
The long promises of sanctions against Russia start to be applied. Today, Germany, in a reaction to Russia's recognition of the self-proclaimed republics in Luhansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine, has stopped the certification process for the controversial Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Olaf Scholz announced the decision, saying the project cannot go ahead now in these crisis circumstances.
Today, I asked the Federal Ministry of Economics to withdraw from the Federal Grid Agency a report on ensuring energy security. This sounds like a technical moment, but it is a necessary step so that the certification of the gas pipeline cannot take place now. Without this certification, Nord Stream 2 cannot be launched.
Shortly afterwards, the White House started a series of reactions to the decision. Washington welcomed Scholz's announcement and promised it would be followed up with measures of its own. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba was among those welcoming Germany's decision to suspend certification of the pipeline, while the Polish Deputy Prime Minister Jarosław Kaczyński expected more and didn't feel the measures went far enough. The Kremlin reacted through its Deputy Chair of Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, who said on Twitter the decision would come with a cost to Europeans.
Well, welcome to the brave new world where Europeans are very soon going to pay 2,000 euros for 1,000 cubic meters of natural gas.
The suspension of the certification process for the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline is the first among many severe sanctions weighting Russia after several diplomatic efforts, which apparently failed to offer a breakthrough to the ongoing rising tension between Russia and Ukraine.
Russian President Vladimir Putin recognized the independence of two separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk in eastern Ukraine. The move has escalated fears among the Western nations about Russian invasion of Ukraine. Hours after the announcement, Putin instructed the defense ministry to send troops into the territories for what the Kremlin called the function of peacekeeping. The Russian President Vladimir Putin always signed a decree claiming independence for the two separatist regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, following that Putin ordered troops to the region in what Moscow called the function of peacekeeping. Nabil Khazini has more to tell in this video.
In a move which further escalates tension in Ukraine, the Russian president appeared in a meeting with the leaders of the two separatist regions of Donetsk and Luhansk, where he signed a decree recognizing the two regions as independent. Following that, in a televised speech, Putin made an announcement to the nation.
I want to say it clearly and directly. In the current situation, when our proposals for an equal dialogue on matters of principle are in fact left unanswered by the United States and NATO, when the level of threats to our country is increasing dramatically, Russia has every right to take countermeasures to ensure its own security.
Few hours later, the Russian president instructed the defense ministry to send troops into the territories for what the Kremlin called the function of peacekeeping. Putin's moves have intensified fears among Western nations about the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
United States of America and other partners, and of course Ukraine, were for quite a long period of time were saying that to provoke the conflict, the false flag operations will be organized by Russia Federation. And this case is exactly the example of such a false flag operation.
In Kiev, the Ukrainian capital, residents also received the news with fear that their country could be invaded at any time.
I think it destroy Minsk relationships, what he was talking about, and that's crazy because the diplomatic here is over. And what I'm gonna say, that's crazy because we don't want a war.
I'm very shocked because I have a lot of family members in eastern Ukraine. I'm actually from Donetsk. It's my 8th year living in Kiev. So this is the scariest news after 8 years.
Now, the Western countries are doubling their efforts to find any possible breakthrough to the crisis, a crisis which threatens the security of Europe and will certainly have an impact on the entire world.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky stated in an address to the nation that Ukraine explicitly describes Russia's recent actions as a violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of our state.
Ukraine unequivocally describes Russia's recent actions as violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of our state, and responsibility for these decisions rests with Russia's political leaders. Recognition of the independence of the occupied areas of Donetsk and Lugansk can mean Russia's unilateral withdrawal from the Minsk agreements and ignorance of the decisions taken in the Normandy format.
The NATO and the EU is planning to impose tough sanctions to be implemented against Moscow after Vladimir Putin ordered troops into Ukraine. The sanctions may affect Russia economically since they are targeting the financial sector, including banks. Islam Seed.
NATO has called an extraordinary meeting with the NATO-Ukraine Commission as alliance members prepare for further Russian military actions against Kiev.
The House should be in no doubt that the deployment of these forces in sovereign Ukrainian territory amounts to a renewed invasion of that country. And by denying Ukraine's legitimacy as a state and presenting its very existence as a mortal threat to Russia, Putin is establishing the pretext for a full-scale offensive.
Senior EU officials said on Tuesday the European Union is close to agreeing sanctions on Russia that would be ban trading in Russian state bonds and target imports and exports with separatist entities. Banks involved in financing separatist activities in eastern Ukraine could also be targeted. Britain today slapped sanctions on 5 Russian banks and 3 billionaires in what British Prime Minister Boris Johnson called the first barrage of measures in response to the Kremlin's actions in Ukraine.
Now the UK and our allies will begin to impose the sanctions on Russia that we have already prepared, using the new and unprecedented powers granted by this House to sanction Russian individuals and entities of strategic importance to the Kremlin.
The 5 Russian banks to be sanctioned include Rossiya Bank, General Bank, Pромsvязьbank, and the Black Sea Bank.
And in the same story, Ukrainian government soldiers in frontline trenches in Ukraine's east said on Monday that the heavy shelling from Russian-backed parties had intensified to provoke all-out conflicts amid fears of Russia seeking a pretext for full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Osama Ayadi.
More sporadic shelling has been reported on villages on the front lines of the Ukrainian military. The army has announced that 660 weapons have been used against the military troops, which position along the 420-kilometer border front lines against the Russian invasion.
They are targeting infantry in the dugouts. I stood at the entrance and heard first incoming, 10 meters away from me. They shelled along the road we walk along, perhaps, tried to hit our communication lines. The shelling is much more frequent and concentrated recently.
Ukrainian army reported that weapons differed from machine guns to heavy artillery have been used against them in the last 24 hours. What is of great concern in the region is that the village is still home for a great number of civilians who have not been evacuated, although a great number of buildings have been occupied by military forces.
23 meters from there is a separatist trench. Between us is a minefield.
6 blasts could be heard on Tuesday in the center of the separatist-held city of Donetsk in eastern Ukraine. However, the source of the blast was unclear. Donetsk citizens on the separatist side also reported that the Russian military buildup was something never seen before. Russian forces on the other side say that troops deployed to Donetsk and Lugansk are in a peacekeeping mission to protect the Russian-speaking minority in the eastern region of Ukraine.
President Putin is testing our international system. He is testing our resolve and seeing just how far he can push us all.
Ukrainian military already stated that army positions were under shelling during a visit of officials to their front lines.
The heads of eastern Ukraine's self-proclaimed separatist republics on Friday announced that they would evacuate civilians to Russia, accusing Ukraine of planning to invade their territory. Tens of thousands of women, children, and elderly have since crossed into Russia. President Vladimir Putin announced that the Russian government will pay 10,000 rubles to every refugee arriving in the country from the Donbass. The Moscow Times traveled to Rostov region of southern Russia, the first destination for Donbass evacuees. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky and President of Estonia Alar Karis gave a joint press conference in Kiev today, February 22nd. The event comes a day after Russian President Vladimir Putin signed a decree confirming Moscow's official recognition of independence of Luhansk People Republic and Donetsk People Republic at ceremony in the Kremlin.
We think the escalation against Ukraine is not just a challenge, not only for Ukraine, but for the world as a whole. In Ukraine, the security of Europe is being decided. Europe and the world cannot afford the mistakes which were committed back in Georgia in 2009. We demand a new package of sanctions against the aggression of Ukraine. It should be including the full stop of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Tuesday questioned whether Ukraine had a right to sovereignty because he said that government in Kiev did not represent the country's constituent parts. He accused Ukraine of being out of line with that since 2014, when Moscow-backed president was outthrown in Kiev and replaced by the pro-Western leader, prompting Russia to annex Ukraine's peninsula of Crimea and back an insurgency in eastern regions.
If we talk about the principle of sovereignty and territorial integrity, one of the key documents is the Declaration on Principles of International Law concerning friendly relations among people.
The meeting of Russia's President Vladimir Putin and his Azerbaijan counterpart Ilham Aliyev kicked off today in Moscow. Earlier, the Kremlin press service reported that the Russian and Azerbaijan president will discuss the implementation process of 2020 November 9 and 2021 January 11 trade terror agreements over Nagorno-Karabakh and blocking of the economic and transportation communications in the South Caucasus, as well as issues relating to further development of bilateral relations in political, commercial, and humanitarian areas.
We anticipated there would be speculation that Russia is about to reconstitute an empire within imperial borders. This is absolutely not true. After the collapse of the USSR, Russia recognized all new geopolitical realities and, as you know, is actively working to strengthen our interaction with all countries, independent states that have emerged in the post-Soviet space.
Russia's recognition of Ukraine's rebel regions has drawn differing views within Ukraine. Kiev residents have refused to accept, while Donetsk celebrate the move. Usama Ayadi.
Putin's decision to recognize the two eastern Ukrainian regions, Donetsk and Lugansk, as independent people's republics has seen a wide criticism from the West, as the latter rails against the Russian movement that is considered inside Ukrainian territories. Several members of the United Nations Security Council have on Monday condemned Russia's moves to escalate its crisis with Ukraine.
We are committed to a peaceful and diplomatic path, and we will stay firmly on it. We are on our land. We are not afraid of anything or anyone. We owe nothing to anyone.
Britain will immediately impose hard economic sanctions on Russia after President Vladimir Putin ordered the deployment of troops to the two breakaway regions in eastern Ukraine. Boris Johnson has said Vladimir Putin's recognition of the breakaway republics of Donetsk and Lugansk was plainly in breach of international law and was a flagrant violation of the sovereignty of Ukraine.
This is plainly in breach of international law. It's a violation, a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine.
British Health Minister Sajid Javid stated that the last movement of Russian government and the order of troop deployment in the two cities Donetsk and Lugansk is a clear clue that Russian invasion of Ukraine has begun.
Waking up to a very dark day in Europe, and it's clear from what we've already seen and found out today that the Russians, President Putin, has decided to attack the sovereignty of Ukraine and its territorial integrity. We've always said that's completely unacceptable.
British Prime Minister Boris Johnson offered defensive support in a call with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, saying while a diplomatic solution should be pursued until the last possible second, the situation was deteriorating.
European Union's top diplomat vowed Monday that the EU is ready to limit financial assistance and possibly impose sanctions in Bosnia to help prevent the possible breakup of the ethnically divided Balkan country. This comes amid attempts by the leader of Bosnia's Serb-run region to win great autonomy for ethnic Serb in Bosnia, reversing what he has described as years of gradual centralization.
On Bosnia and Herzegovina, we discuss about how to preserve the sovereignty, the territorial integrity, and the unity of the country. We have urged political leaders to take responsibility to preserve the constitution, ensure full return to state institutions, and it will open issues. There is no place in Europe for a divided Bosnia and Herzegovina, and those who work in this direction are strongly wrong. They are depriving their people of a prosperous European perspective on life.
A UN human rights expert visited Sudan to verify allegation of a human rights violation After an October military coup plunged the country into chaos, thousands once again took the streets of the capital to denounce the takeover. Thousands of people marched in the streets in Khartoum and its twin city of Omdurman to call for the establishment of fully civilian government to lead the democratic transition. A strong explosion near a gold mining site in the southwestern Burkina Faso killed 59 people and injured more than 100 others. Monday, the provincial tool was provided by regional authorities following the blast in the village of the G. Bomblora. The explosion was believed to have been caused by chemicals used to treat gold that were stocked at the site. Journalists who said their professions is hurt and in danger to the death of 5 journalists lately in Mexico took the streets calling for Mexican President Manuel López Obrador to put an end to the violence against them. Islam Seed.
After the wave of violence against media workers, which left 5 journalists killed in one of the most dangerous countries in the world, the Mexican border city of Tijuana has held journalist protests to urge the Mexican President Manuel López Obrador to put an end to the wave of violence against press sector. The protests came simultaneously when the president has increased his verbal attacks against journalists and calling for the president to curb violence instead of stigmatizing those who are practicing freedom of expression.
It is not the kind of journalist you mention who has the noble job of informing the citizens and criticize bad public servants. No, this is something else.
The Mexican president said he regretted the deaths of the journalists. However, he later angrily criticized all the media workers, calling them mercenaries who assume they are backed by influence peddlers and the U.S. to attack him. The president's comments follow days of sharp criticism against him for repeatedly broadcasting the so-called of a well-known Mexican telecaster, Carlos Loret de Mola, in his daily press conference. López Obrador launched his attack on Loret when the journalist released an investigation accusing one of the president's sons with extravagant lifestyle and corruption.
The president needs to hear the voice of the Journalists Guild. Most of us do not agree. He uses his daily news conference to generalize about journalists. Society believes him because he's the president, and he's creating this idea that most journalists are sellouts and work in the interest of some obscure agenda. Maybe some are, but most of us who work every day in the streets are doing it because it's our vocation.
The streak of violence against journalists in the country has put López Obrador under international pressure, including by U.S. lawmakers. There have been more than 30 journalists killed since López Obrador took rule of the country, while at least 12 others have been listed missing.
The Sri Lankan government on Monday admitted that it has run out of cash to buy fuel as pumps in most stations across the country have run dry. Exacerbating the deepening foreign exchange crisis that has crippled the island nation's economy, so dire is Sri Lanka's current economy situation that it does not even have adequate US dollar to pay for 2 shipments of fuel. A former high-ranking Sandinistas official was sentenced to 13 years in prison by Nicaraguan authorities on Monday for conspiracy to harm national integrity. President Daniel Ortega jailed schools of opposition leaders last year in order to allow him to run for re-election. Victor Hugo Tinoco is one of them. Tinoco served as the deputy foreign minister in the first Sandinistas government in 1979, but eventually fell out with Ortega. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson said on Monday that all coronavirus restrictions would be lifted as part of living with COVID strategy and made of hastening the end of the pandemic, which include enforced self-isolation for those with COVID-19 and free testing. It is unclear whether the new restrictions will be applied only in England or the entire United Kingdom. But Wales First Minister stated that he does not agree with this decision, calling any changes to testing premature and foolish.
In England, we will remove all remaining domestic restrictions in law. From this Thursday, it will no longer be law to self-isolate if you test positive, and so we will also end the provision of self-isolation support payments, although statutory sick pay can still be claimed for a further month.
The Chinese mainland has sent a group of medical experts and mobile nucleic acid testing vehicle to Hong Kong to help fight a new COVID-19 surge in the region and will continue to provide more support if necessary. The medical team includes members of the National Epidemiological Investigation Group who has a good command of Cantonese and English, are familiar with Hong Kong society. New Zealand anti-vaccine protesters attacked police with a strychnine substance, sending 3 to hospital with injuries on Tuesday, February 22nd. As tensions spilled over in an angry weeks-long protest, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern described absolutely disgraceful scenes after a suspected acid attack and a startling incident that saw one protester speed a car toward the police lines before coming to a quick halt just centimeters away. Now, the world number one kicked off of 2022 campaign with a 6-3 victory of the Italian teenager Lorenzo Musetti. Djokovic acknowledged that his reputation has taken a hit in the recent weeks and has consulted PR professionals. Novak Djokovic admitted the warm reception he was given by fans in Dubai on Monday exceeded his expectations as he made up a successful return to the tour for the first time since his deportation from Australia Open.
Very much so. Good evening, everybody. Dobro večer svima. I couldn't ask for a better reception, and it's been a while since I played the last match, so I couldn't pick a better place to kickstart the season and best possible experience tonight. And thank you very much for your support and welcoming me on the court the way you did. Thank you very much.
Ladies and ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune on Tuesday left Doha, Qatar, heading directly to the brotherly state of Kuwait in his second destination for an official visit in the Gulf region. The UN Security Council on Tuesday convened an emergency meeting on Ukraine tensions. The meeting was held at the request of the Ukrainian side after Russian President Vladimir Putin signed 2 decrees recognizing the Luhansk and Donetsk as independent states. The German Chancellor has said that the certification of the Nord Stream 2 project cannot go ahead following the latest Russian action in Ukraine. The commands come after Moscow ordered troops into the breakaway regions in the east of the country. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov on Tuesday questioned whether Ukraine had the right sovereignty because he said the government in Kiev did not represent the country's constituted part. That's all what we have got for today's bulletin. Thank you so much for being with us. Our 24 program is still rolling, so stay tuned for further details. Let's have a blessed evening and bye-bye.